Today is my first episode, and I'm very excited about this topic. We will be discussing redefining home from New York to the Philippines, which is where I'm now, and everywhere in between, which is a lot of places. So I don't know if we'll get to everywhere, but I'm going to definitely highlight some of the quintessential highlights of things that relate to me feeling at home and leaving my roots from New York behind to embrace this nomadic life that I have chosen to do. But what is home? It's a really good question. What is home to you? What does it mean to you? Have you really thought about that? Well, for me, like many topics, it's something that I have dived deep, introspective about, and critically thought about and consider a lot, especially as a nomad and living really very much almost like, I don't know, maybe almost like a gypsy, but not exactly the same in the trailer. I briefly shared about leaving New York because I always yearned and had a fascination for more than where I grew up. And that really started to kick in definitely sometime in my teenage years, probably in high school, and which makes sense because started becoming critically aware of things in mental development. You start to wonder about other things and want to try new things that your family or education, your teachers, or the values of your culture, they tell you this is what it is for you. When you get older, this is going to be it for you. Because I've learned this more and more that formative years, we are taught a certain way of thinking, and we are always kind of kept on a certain path where if we step out of line a little bit, someone's going to notice and they might question you or give you a suggestion it's really not a great idea, like wearing a certain outfit and certain behaviors that are considered polite or disrespectful. For me, I wanted to know more. And when I was growing up, I really felt a high riding my bike around the neighborhood back in the days where you were allowed to ride around the neighborhood without so much supervision. As a Gen X girl, we didn't wear helmets. We stayed out till late at night, and then we were called in for dinner or bedtime. We were quite independent as children outside of the house, but certainly inside my home, it was a different story. My mother kept a very tidy home, very organized and very structured. And she needed it to be that way. That was her personality. And well, you had to follow those rules. So outside of the house was really where I felt more at home than I did a lot of times in my house because I felt very anxious and stressed because I was always worried that I was stepping out of line or making sure that she wouldn't get upset if I did certain things. So it was like walking on eggshells a lot. But home, where you grow up, is a place where you should want to leave and you should want to have new experiences. And of course, having your own place and figuring out what things you like and don't like in your home and learning life skills that you need, but you can't learn them all when someone like your parents are telling you what to do and how to do things on a regular basis. It's a good start to life, but definitely it didn't offer me everything because as you get older, your needs and things that you want in your home and the people you want in your home change. It evolves. Now, many times throughout my travels, when I meet someone new, another even expat from other countries, especially other countries that maybe are in more hostile situations politically, and they're looking for a new place to call home. When I share with these expats or locals in the countries that I'm in, when I share I'm from the United States and then I share that I'm from New York, their eyebrows like shoot up and their eyes wide open. And they can't wait to talk to me about America and things about it for them as an opportunity for their future. Now, it's really interesting. It's been challenging, but very interesting to see that perspective because for me, it's just a place where I grew up. I'm from Long Island, New York. And if you don't know Long Island, it is a piece of land that looks kind of like a fish. And it's an island that is off the east coast of Manhattan. And Manhattan is an island as well. But most people think of New York as Manhattan, but New York has many parts to it, including the state of New York, which is a large landmass that goes all the way up to Canada. So I grew up on Long Island, and it was at that time, but now looking back, a great place for a family, children. When my parents moved there, when I guess after they got married or something where they decided to live closer to family or things that were important to them, Long Island was still gentrifying, and meaning that Long Island was a farmland at some point, although that the land has lots of rocks because it was made from a glacier. However, it was a lot of farming there. And the first suburbia was from Long Island, Levittown. If you look up Levittown and the history of suburbia and like cookie cut houses in a community, the Levittown family were the ones that created that. And that happened after World War II for the veterans for affordable housing. Now, my parents got there at that a right time where things were still developing and affordable. So where I grew up in a cul-de-sac where I called it a court. But, it was a place where no traffic was going through because it was not a road. And for me, being outside and playing was wonderful because it was quiet most of the time. You can play sports like basketball, baseball, dodgeball, jump rope, frisbee, you name it, we did it. And there was a park nearby, and all our friends were very, very close by. And, when you're a child, I think home is easier. It's simpler for you because you don't really have to think about many things other than your simple routine of school, homework, meals, showers, hangout time with the family, and weekends with friends. So I enjoyed it. I really, really liked my early years on Long Island. However, when I got into middle school and high school, like many other adolescents, you start becoming more aware of your feelings about your home and things that you're not maybe so comfortable about. But I can tell you that home felt different. And I was a very anxious child. Going home and being in a very rigid environment really caused a lot of anxiety for me. But back then, we didn't talk about anxieties. For me, I thought this was just what it's about. So I started to realize that I really wasn't comfortable being myself where I'm from because there was a lot of status, like keeping up with the Joneses with clothes and cars and houses. And my particular culture, we would talk about that all the time and compare ourselves all the time. And that really wasn't who I am. And to be honest, in a lot of ways, my family wasn't either, though my mother really cared about certain things with those certain values that she wanted for us. But both my sister and I were very anxious around this kind of superficiality and judgment. It affected us at school and groups and things like that. So for me, I wasn't feeling like at home. I started to realize that there must be something else. And when I started dating and I had a high school sweetheart, which is still warm to my heart. I think that was one of the first times that I really felt at home. And it was a really wonderful part of my life because when I went to my boyfriend's house, his mother is Italian. And Italians and Jews like myself, we lived right next to each other and we have similar values. And when I would go to their house, though, I just felt so warm and welcomed and not judged for how I dressed or watching everything that I say and do. I just felt like me. And I felt so happy there. And it was such a surprise for me because I've had many friends, but this moment was probably one of the happiest moments in my life. And it's not just because I was in love and again, a teenager, almost into university, but I just didn't feel so insecure. I don't know, I felt safe. So when it comes to talking about home, that's really what it's about for me. It's about the feeling. It's about the feeling of a place or a person. It's not about your childhood. It's not about where you grew up. It's not about what state or country you're from. Home is a very broad and interesting topic that really needs more consideration than the superficial of whatever definition you were told or by perhaps the definition in a dictionary. There is so much more to life than just being in your parents' home or in the country that you grew up in. And yet, every time I bring this up, well, not every time, but a lot of times people are like, why are you here? Why did you choose the Philippines? Why did you choose China? Why did you choose Peru? Why did you choose Poland? Like when I go to these countries and I move there, when I start a conversation to get to know a local or somebody that's not from America, they find it really bizarre and unusual that I left. I left America when they want and desire the American dream that they really don't know about, which of course I'll get into another time. But I move a lot and I go to many different places in my travels. Home is many things to me. And if you want to use the cliche, home is where the heart is, you've probably heard that expression. Yeah, that's really what it is. And I think that a lot of the time why I leave places or go travel to places is because I'm always looking for that feeling of home or a connection with a culture, a way of seeing things. It's that really for me. It's not about having like owning a home in one place and living there for 20, 30 years. If you look back in human history, we were nomadic. I mean, think about how you got to where you are, your parents, your grandparents, and back and back and back. We were nomads. We moved around. It was very natural for human beings to be nomadic, actually. But it's not the trend anymore. People pick a country or pick a place that makes them feel safe, comforted, familiar. Does that sound right? Because for me, that's really what most people want to challenge me about is why would I want to leave? Because New York has everything, and it really does, as far as things that are of value to me, like arts and culture, the diversity. It's just so rich in those areas that I find very difficult to find in other places. But it's not everything. It's really expensive in New York. The cost of living versus salaries are not in check with each other. Again, I can get deep into that, but not today. But America is not what you see in movies. And it's certainly not so easy to make a home and feel like home when, for me, I was always drowning in debt or dealing with my day to day life, which was always so difficult because I was always thinking about money and I don't want to think about money. I need money, but I don't want to be thinking about it every day. That's just not my personality. So, another thing that you can think about as an artist like myself, or again, a heart of a creative, is an expression that, or quote that I came across recently, which is the power of finding beauty in the humblest makes home happy and life lovely everywhere. And for me, I really identify with that quote. It's really about the simple pleasures in life. Like, as I said, when I would go to my boyfriend from high school house, like it was just hanging out with them in their living room and having conversation or playing a board game or having a lovely home cooked meal at a table together and laughing. And it's really about these beautiful, simple moments. I treasure them. So after I went to university, undergraduate, I went to another state for university. I wanted to get away, see another part of the country. And it was eye opening too, but it definitely was not home for me in the Midwest. It really felt quite unfamiliar. And again, it's my first time being away from home, like living away from home for a long term. And it was a good experience. But I can tell you that when I started working, it was at this early stages of my adult life where I was able to save up money. This job I had, I worked for a division of Mattel, which no longer exists, but the work was grueling and the hours were intense with toy fairs. But the money was great because it was time and a half and double time after certain hours. And I finally was able to be an adult and go travel by myself. And this was back in, I think it was 1996. And so I went to a travel agent. This is 1996. And I even brought cash, not a check. But I was able to talk with a travel agent and share what I was looking for. And at that time, I just like, I want to be in a place where there's lots of animals. I love animals so much. And I described things that I wanted to do. And we decided on Costa Rica. And Costa Rica was, for me, and still is, one of my most favorite countries and places that I have experienced in my life. And I do believe it does contribute to being a newbie to travel. And everything was with bright eyes and curiosity and not knowing what to expect, no expectations. It just was the best feeling. I felt so connected there. And again, I've never been to a place like that before. Costa Rica is in Central America. It's tropical, hot weather, and again, nature everywhere. And people had their local shops and local markets. You're much more connected to the people that way compared to a supermarket where you just deal with the cashier. When you're at live markets, you really see and feel the life of the people. And definitely back then, no one was on cell phones. They didn't exist. So everything was analog. So I was really having a hands-on experience there. And what really made me feel at home was, again, it brought me back to that feeling of my ex-boyfriend's family and house. They were just so welcoming to me. And it wasn't just because I'm a foreigner and that I'm paying them to be nice or hospitable to me. They genuinely were so welcoming in a way that I honestly never felt back where I grew up with Long Island and having this very individualistic experience. Now, I love individualism. I'm a big fan of individualism. That's very important to me and still very much is because I believe in having your own opinion and voice about stuff. But at the same time, just because I was solo doesn't mean I don't want to feel part of a community or make friends, have a relationship. Of course, I want that. Everyone in their own way wants community, family, feeling a sense of belonging. And I think that's really what it comes down to. I felt a sense of belonging. Now, I also experienced something that was very eye-opening in Costa Rica was that my flight lost my luggage, even though it was a direct flight. I believe it was a direct flight, and my luggage did not arrive. Now I was freaking out. I've never experienced this before, and I don't know what to do about this. And I was freaking out because I also put medication in that bag, which I had to learn the hard way. You carry it on the plane, of course. But anyway, like all my clothes, everything, like I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. And the place that I stayed at, the owners or the staff, they were so relaxed about it. They're like, don't like basically the feeling of don't worry, we'll help you get some clothes and your basic needs and we'll help you find your luggage and stuff like that. And they really did. And again, this is a long time ago. This is almost 30 years ago. They did take care of me and they took me to a place where I can buy some clothes and things for hygiene and so on. And it was just their way of doing it that made me feel so calm because I've noticed it in a lot of tropical places that I go to. They are just much more relaxed people. They just are.
Today we have been discussing redefining home from New York to the Philippines and everywhere in between. I kicked off yesterday or the day before that discussing what home truly means to me and asking you all to think about what home means to you. And I've discussed the things that are important to me are related to how I feel. And feeling at home means really feeling myself and feeling that in whole. And I think that's also when we talk about relationships with people that are your family, friends, lovers, and so on. I believe that when we find the right home, the right place, or the right person, or other things, that it's the feeling of being yourself. And so I have shared with you about where I have felt at home already, which started in from being outdoors, playing as a little girl, to being a teenager in my ex's home and his family, to living in Costa Rica, not living in Costa Rica, and traveling in Costa Rica as my first independent solo expat kind of experience. And I'm kind of, I guess, when it comes to this topic, which is very important to me, although you might think, well, you move around, you don't care about home. The thing is that part of the reason why I live such a nomadic lifestyle, meaning living in many countries, is that I really haven't found the one place that I would consider home, meaning a place that I could say, I really could spend this amount of years, 10 years, 5 years, or more. Because to be honest, there are many factors that contribute to that. It's a quite complicated situation for me. I really have a difficulty feeling at home in any one place. If I was to start off the second half of this podcast on the topic about home, if there was a place that I could foresee myself living a longer term and being satisfied with being there for an extended period of time, I would say there are so far maybe two places that I would consider for that. One of them, and probably the number one at this point, would be Italy. And I've always had an affinity for Italy. You must have had these feelings about places even before you go there, or you just gather knowledge of certain things and you just have a gut instinct that yes, this is a match for me. And you know, as animals, as humans, we can draw to those instincts for a reason. And again, as a child and a teenager growing up with the Italian community, it's already something familiar, but it's also a place that a lot of Americans do travel to if they go out of the US. And it there's good reason for that. It really does have this really special culture that universally feels good. And I did go travel there about 10 years ago. I can't believe I can't believe I'm saying that 10 years ago. I finally made it there. And I only spent 10 days. But man, I just felt like they understand me. And the reason why I say that is because, as someone, again, as a creative spirit, someone that believes in beauty and function, they have that aspect to their culture, and it defines a good portion of their daily life. Because when you go to Italy, and again, you can put a big city as an example, like Florence or Venice and Rome, of course, you will not see billboards of advertisements everywhere, like for clothing, cars, food. They don't allow it. It's prohibited. And if there is one or two, it's maybe for a very short period of time for a certain occasion. But overall, they preserve the aesthetic and beauty of their history, and the architecture is a big part of their culture. So when you walk around the streets there, day or night, you can really feel connected to their culture, their history, um, their roads, the texture of the bricks, narrow streets, um, the beautiful big windows with their shutters, and people hanging out, relaxing outside, or doing their laundry and hanging it up. I mean, you just can walk down the street and just be engulfed in their culture without any distraction. It is just beautiful. Just their life is beautiful, simple and beautiful. As someone that does photography, it's just eye candy, and every moment, as we would say, a Kodak moment. It really is that way, especially in the morning light and afternoon light. Mm. Their food, as you know, that is also very beautiful. Um, you eat with our eyes and our nose as well as our mouth. So um, the cafes, mm, everything is just charm everywhere. They slow down life and enjoy it. They're not about getting the most done out of their day and making sure that um, nothing is untouched, or I'm not saying untouched, but they can leave for the day without feeling like, oh, I didn't complete it, I have to stay. They know when to say, I'm done for today, or it's lunchtime, I'm going to go home and spend it with my family, and we're going to enjoy a meal together around a table and take that break. In Europe, they do that in many cultures there. They go home for work. They don't eat fast food or just run to a place and get back to work. They slow down and they take a break and then they go back to work. But then, it's like in the morning too, they'll drink their little espresso in the morning at their cafe. I mean, I was there early in the morning and I would just see them hanging out with their friends or family and starting their day that way, not in any rush. And their culture functions just fine and life goes on. It teaches me a lot about what quality of life is about. And the arts are a big part of their culture. They think it has a huge value to their life. And for me, I agree. And I have the evidence to support it, which again will be always part of my podcast, is sharing how art and culture are such an important aspect to humanity and to education and to our day-to-day lives. Unfortunately, most cultures are not valuing it as we used to. But in many cultures in Europe and other places in the world, the arts are still of huge value and appreciated. And when I'm there, I feel like, again, me, because I see that their values are similar to mine. And it makes me feel at home. It feels like I'm not alone. And again, I don't need to know every person there. I don't even have to have a good friend there. But the environment itself makes me feel at home because I can see their values. I can see what's important to them. You don't need to talk to anyone in a culture to get to know the culture if you take the time to be a wallflower like myself and stand back and observe and look and listen. You get to know a culture because seeing is believing. We know that actions speak louder than words. And what I see there is a lot of action on caring for and respecting humanity and what we've created and what life is all about. Now, that's important to me to feel that way. Again, a lot of people move to countries or places based on the socioeconomics of places because of safety. I talked about the reasons why people go to places, but there's also reasons why people travel to places. But we don't have to look at places we travel as just places we travel. We can go to places and say, wow, I'm really enjoying myself on my holiday, but maybe this could be a place that I could retire. Or this could be a place that I spend 6 months of the year. This could be a place that I'm investing in. This is a place that I want to something for a year. I mean, now that we're in this age of technology and the way things work, all of this is accessible. We don't have to separate places we enjoy from places we want to call home. They can be both. It can be a mixture of things. Home can be so much more than what I believe I see in the world, which is we choose one place or one country or one way, and then that's it. And nothing else is really explored on that. So, as a creative, again, as someone that studied to critically think about if it really wasn't for money, I think that I'd probably live there or Spain again, because Spain has similar feeling to me as does Italy. But money does play a big role on that. Because, again, I'm an ambitious person in my own way, like when I want to do something, I will put 100% or, maybe, not exactly that, but I'm all in. But again, I can't make like anymore. I don't want to make decisions based on that money is a problem. So, I've worked very hard for many years doing teaching art and teaching English in the countries that I have mentioned prior. Um, and again, I'll just review a little. I worked in Peru and Poland and South Korea, China, um, as a teacher because that's what I learned how to. It's something that I learned was a possibility of how can I live abroad, and, and that was a long time ago, and it wasn't the right fit for me, meaning what I really wanted to do. But to keep it simple right now, it's what made it accessible, um, and I did it for a while. But now it's really time for me to change that, and I'm really trying to start again with being a person that carves my way into making a living and doing things that support my values, my morals, my passions, my talents. And this is one of them, is starting with the podcasting and hopefully developing more into work that will allow me to have a more independent lifestyle where I can be more at home or more time to travel, and just have more flexibility in the way I do things. So I'm starting kind of over again, and I'm in the Philippines now. And if I want to talk about the Philippines a little bit, I will share that just like in Costa Rica, there's a much more relaxed atmosphere. People are friendly. People still say hello when you walk by. Like, there's lots of friendly people here, very friendly. Yesterday, I needed to rent a car because I needed to go take care of some personal business in another city. And I did get my uh, driver's license here in the Philippines. I mean, I'm not a new driver, but my license from the States expired and I needed a new driver's license. And I was able to do that very easily here, very easily. It was so, so easy. And anyway, so it was great to be back on the road because I've used public transport in most other countries. I've not needed to buy a car or deal with that expense, which has been great. But here in the Philippines, it's a little more challenging. Um, and anyway, so when I came back from my day, I needed to fill up the gas before I returned it to the owner. And so I'm at the Shell station, which is, a company that is familiar to me from the States. But when I'm at the gas station, I felt like I went back in time to the 50s in America. And if you would like go watch Back to the Future, the first one, and when Marty goes back to 1955, I think it was, and he goes to the gas station, they they want to clean the front windshield of your car. They want to put air in my tires. They offered it to me. He was his face was smiling, very clean, um, professional uniform, so friendly, so helpful. It was wow. I was just like, now I know what it was like to be back at that time in America when customer service was really about customer service. And that's kind of stuff that you can experience. I'm not saying it happens everywhere every time here, but it was really a great moment. And since I've been in Asia, because I was in China working before here, the reason why I'm staying in Asia is for some logical, practical reasons. Um, I'll give you a couple of them. When I was in China, I was there during the entire pandemic. And I will get into that because that was my home for 4.5 years. So we will talk about China. But let me just share that when I got to China, it was like October 2019, and the pandemic really again, started in China, but lockdown happened by the like third week in January. We were, officially in the lockdown at that time. Um, and right before that, I traveled to the Philippines during Christmas, New Year's time. And I'm like, oh, maybe the Philippines might be a place in the future for me to invest in or consider as a home base. Because I mentioned that they are jolly, friendly, and I had experiences there in their culture that reminded me of Costa Rica. And I'm like, oh, well, and for me to go back to Costa Rica or that side of the world is very expensive and it's just not reasonable.